Greetings and welcome to the United States Transhumanist Party Virtual Enlightenment Salon. My name is Gennady Stolyarov II, and I am the chairman of the U.S. Transhumanist Party. Here we hold conversations with some of the world's leading thinkers in longevity, science, technology, philosophy, and politics. Like the philosophers of the Age of Enlightenment, we aim to connect every field of human endeavor and arrive at new insights to achieve longer lives, greater rationality, and the progress of our civilization. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the United States Transhumanist Party Virtual Enlightenment Salon of November 26th, 2023. Today we have a fascinating discussion in store for you regarding basic income and its ability to change the prospects of individuals in their lives. Joining us today is our distinguished panel of U.S. Transhumanist Party officers, including our Director of Visual Art, Art Ramon Garcia, our 2024 U.S. Vice Presidential Candidate and Director of Community and Citizen Science, Daniel Tweed, our Director of Longevity Outreach, Ben Ballweg, our Legislative Director, Jason Geringer, our Secretary and one of the guests of honor for this salon, Brent Ellman, and our special guest, Rosemarie Palafox, who is actually a recipient of the Denver Basic Income Project. So this is a fascinating conversation because we have had a lot of conversations about basic income in the abstract. But here we have a chance to speak with a person who has actually had her life affected by basic income. So Rosemarie, welcome. It is our pleasure to have you speak with us today. Please tell us your story. What was your life like before you received basic income? How did you come across the Denver Basic Income Project, and how has it affected your life?
Well, I had gotten in a car wreck and became homeless. I lost my job, I lost my apartment, and I ended up going to like shelters, and then I ended up in a tent city ran by it's a SOS camp ran by the Colorado Village Collaborative. And while I was getting ready, they put us on a list to like get apartments and stuff. And while I was in the camp, I started going to school at MSU because I had lost my job. So that, and I have arthritis, and they think I might have fibromyalgia and stuff. So I have a hard time doing demolition, asbestos abatement, which I plan on doing this summer anyway, but as a supervisor. So I started school and they moved me up the list to get an apartment. Well, last winter they had this lottery ran by the Denver Basic Income Project, and they went around to all the shelters and to homeless people, and they put them in a lottery, and then they drew names, as to who would get what amount. And it turns out I got the highest amount, and which it was really helpful. It was my first year of college, and at that time, I had gotten a choice voucher from HUD Housing also for an apartment. And so it really helped me. I had a really hard time. My first year of college, I never even thought I would go to college or become an engineer or go to school to be an engineer. I didn't even know what I was going to school for at first. But it made my life, the Denver Basic Income Project made my life so much easier. I had more time to actually learn like in depth what I was going to school for. I had no idea how to use a laptop. So I needed like extra time to be able to learn things that I usually do manual labor. I had no idea I didn't know nothing about technology at all. So like I was able, because of the Denver Basic Income Project, I was able to pay my bills and have my basic necessities and have everything that I needed while going to college and being able to like actually build a life and a career along with it was paired with HUD Housing, which even made it even better. I had no idea. I feel so blessed and happy. And I think it's a necessity that most people need. They need a basic income if you want them to like it's helping me to succeed and further my education and actually make a career for myself, something that I never thought I would be capable of. I thought I would end up just like living in housing and end up having to get Social Security because I had so many opportunities that came along at the same time, including a Native American grant that they're doing at MSU. So I got like a ton of help all at once. And I thank God for that because without it, I wouldn't have been able to actually move forward. And now I learned how to manage all of it. I'm able to get a part-time job too. So it's helping me to become more independent and to become, it's helping me to obtain higher knowledge. The knowledge that is necessary to obtain a career, that will be, I'll be able to be independent without having to work like a slave. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Yes, that is quite a story. And indeed, you've been able to go from being homeless to having an apartment. You've been able to go from that situation to pursuing a college education as an engineer. That's really quite remarkable. And Brent, I'd like you to talk a bit about how you met Rosemarie and how you found out about the Denver Basic Income Project.
Sure. Thank you, Gennady. Yeah, so as many of us know, I've done some research in the past on basic income programs and wrote an article for TAP's Magazine of the Future. And so living in Denver, Colorado here, I stumbled across the Denver Basic Income Program just in my day-to-day and decided to take a peek at it further because it was something that piqued my interest. And going on the website, I noticed Rosemarie on the homepage and had recognized her from walking our dogs in our complex and decided to introduce myself to her next time that I saw her and strike a conversation and start discussing her experiences with the Denver Basic Income Program. I was very excited to have this discussion today and learn more about your experiences, Rosemarie, specifically, some of the nuanced details related to the program itself. There have been a tremendous upsurge in basic income programs over the last few years, especially since COVID-19 occurred. Of course, we all received our stipends from the federal government, but doing some further digging, it's clear that these basic income programs have been spreading quite rapidly across our country, both in red and blue states alike. And it seems like historically, as opposed to many of the examples of basic income programs that you can find from the last few decades, these more recent basic income programs seem like they're actually designed to have some success. In the past, a lot of these basic income programs were almost designed to fail, it seems, because there's been so much hesitation and just general resistance towards these types of programs from larger organizations. I mean, even the mainstream population, these fears and concerns that I hear from people when these conversations and topics arise regarding, well, now we're on the hook. People are always concerned about, well, if we're going to be receiving money from the government, what do they want from us? But I mean, most of these jobs today, full-time work are still going to take 40 to 50 hours of your work, of your week, excuse me. And they're not guaranteeing to provide you with much more than what you need to sustain yourself, or stepping stone to the next, time drain. And so it's definitely something interesting to me. As Gennady mentioned, my interest in basic income program over the past few years have been fairly deep. My interest in transhumanism aligns with this fairly thoroughly. Just AI and automation specifically, I see that as major opportunities to improve our society. But of course, there are some, issues that, complications that could surely arise as we continue down this path. And one of these being, of course, the ability for, people to sustain themselves when a lot of these more menial jobs fail to be present in the workplace and fail to be options for many people. And, a specific type of universal basic income or basic income program rather, that has piqued my interest, and especially over the years, is the negative income tax, which is similar to most other basic income programs, but the difference between the negative income tax is that people would be receiving either a stipend or they'd be receiving some sort of dividend against their own taxes based on the bracket that they are in economically. And this way there would be, as opposed to a universal basic income where even the billionaires of our society are receiving X amount of money on a however, frequent basis. The negative income tax would mean that those folks would probably, once you're above a certain tax bracket, you'd be paying in, between certain tax brackets, there'd be no taxes, that you'd be on the hook for. And below it, of course, you'd be receiving this stipend from the government. But before I continue talking much about my own interests, I was hoping, Rosemarie, you could kind of share with us a little bit more in detail the specifics of the stipends that are provided to you through the Denver Basic Income Program.
The stipend that was provided to me, let's see, last year I got $6,000, and after that it was $500 a month. So with the $500 a month, I pay all of my bills. It covers my entire bills. It covers the basic necessities that I need for like laundry, detergent, dish soap. I buy everything that I could possibly need. I don't need nothing. My HUD housing helps me. They know that I get it. And so and then I have a little bit of extra money to get me shoes or buy myself something necessary, or school supplies. I paid for school supplies with it. I paid for my school books with it. When I got the $6,000, I got me laptops. I got an office desk. I got the office stuff that I needed for me to be able to study at home. I bought an electric scooter. I run around campus on because I got messed up knees. You know what I mean? Let's see what else. I've gotten quite a few things that I've needed, to be able to. I bought furniture for my bedroom because I had no furniture in my bedroom when I moved in my apartment. When I first got, all that money, I got everything that I needed. I bought myself pots and pans. I got everything that I need in my home, and I don't need nothing. I went to Sam's Club. I got a Sam's Club card. I went to the warehouse, and I just stocked up on everything. I don't need nothing for 2 years. It's not a joke. Because sometimes I need to study and I don't have time to I'll go work at temp jobs sometimes if I don't have enough money just to, make sure I have everything that I need. Or if I run out of food stamps, I'll go work at a temp job and I'll use that money or if my glasses break, you know what I mean? It's really been helpful to me because it gave me everything I needed to actually, you know what I mean? I feel like I'm achieving something. It gave me it gave me a leg up, and which I can't even believe it. It's freaking awesome.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that, Rosemarie. And I wanted to share the mission of the Denver Basic Income Project, which is stated on its website. The Denver Basic Income Project serves unhoused people by examining the impact of direct cash distributions in an effort to encourage a healthier society centered around human thriving. And I also would like to note the Denver Basic Income Project is a private philanthropic initiative, so it is not a government program. This is a page that lists the team members of the Denver Basic Income Project. And really, it seems there are 3 people on the team. One of them is Mark Donovan, who is an entrepreneur and philanthropist who seems to be funding this project. So I'm curious, Rosemarie, what have your interactions with the team of the Denver Basic Income Project been like? And how often have you communicated with them? What kinds of questions have they asked you? Have they checked in on you and how you were doing? Anything of that nature?
Well, I fill out surveys for them every couple weeks, and then every 3 months they do a longer survey. And what they're asking is what we spend our money on. Is it for bills and debts, or do we have a part-time job? Like, it's kind of like a research kind of essay survey kind of thing, not an essay, a survey. And yeah, it's just like, I don't know. I hear from them every couple weeks. They email me communications, and I just fill them out and send them back. If we actually need if we need replacement cards, or if we need help with anything, we go to the place where that actually put in our application for the Denver Basic Income Project, and we talk to them. Like mine was with the Colorado Village Collaborative. If I have any kind of issues, or if I need a replacement card or anything happens, I go talk to the Colorado Village Collaborative, and they talk to them and get a new card. They're provided everything that they need to help us. They also provide phones for some people, and if you don't want the phone that they're providing, they give you an extra little bit. I think it's an extra $12 or something a month. But yeah, I think it's been really helpful. It's really like helped me out. So, but yeah, I agreed to do all their surveys and stuff. You don't have to opt in and do their like research surveys if you don't want to. In case you feel like they're invading your privacy, they track like your spending, and you can opt out of that too. But I opted in for it. That way, it's because it's part of a research project kind of thing. They want to see like what amount people need, I guess, to be able to be successful. So like, yeah, I just do it. I don't mind if people know my business. I don't really have nothing to hide. So yeah.
Yes, so this is a research study as well as a philanthropic initiative, and hopefully the insights from this study will be able to be generalized to larger populations to see what kinds of basic income approaches are helpful. As I understand it, they had multiple test groups that received income in different amounts and in different increments. So some of them received a lump sum, some of them received periodic payments. What can you tell us about that?
All I know is what I received. Like I told you, they have 3 different like groups. I think you're right. One was a lump sum. Like me, I got half and half. I got half of it paid out over a year, and then I got half of the money like given to me at first. And then I think there was another group. They just got like, I don't know. I can't remember the details too well, but I know it's 3 different types of groups that, they give you the money in like different increments and stuff.
Yes, indeed. And there is an article that describes the structure of the program to a greater extent. It is from Business Insider, and it actually features you, Rosemarie. It's entitled "A Native American Woman Experiencing Homelessness Said a Denver Basic Income Program Allowed Her to Pay Bills and Attend College." And the article states that the participants were split into 3 groups, as you said. One received $1,000 a month for a year. Another received $6,500 up front and then $500 a month from there. And another received just $50 a month. So the third group had less of a generous payment, just a little bit, and they're examining how that would affect that group as well. So a very interesting design. I understand there are 807 participants in the Denver Basic Income Project, and the duration is a year. So is that year now over for you, or is it about to be over? What is the situation?
Oh, well, that year ended in November, but I got a message from them not too long ago. They're looking at extending our payments, and I'm not sure what's going on with that. But I went and got a job anyway. But yeah, they're supposed to extend it. I don't know how it's all going to work out or what's going on. I haven't received any other further emails, but I guess we'll see what happens with that.
Yes. And well, one of the premises of a basic income, as it has been advocated, is that even if one gets a job, one will continue to receive the basic income. And that's the difference between basic income and welfare, because one of the main arguments against today's welfare programs has been that they discourage people from working because if someone finds a job, then they're no longer eligible to receive welfare. But with a basic income, ideally, if someone finds a job, one can still receive the basic income, and the basic income will still provide that floor. The job will provide extra income to enable that person to improve their life even further. So I hope that that will be the case for you. And what is your current job, just so that we know?
I'm doing like I work. I'm a cook. I do like cocktail, like I don't know, like galas. I'm a cocktail waitress. I do like. I work for this one place, and we do events. So like I can't work very much because I go to school full time. So the income I get from the basic income project also helps, especially in the wintertime. It's hard to find work. I'm used to doing construction. I do a lot of construction. That's my thing. That's my passion. So like, it's hard to find that type of work in the winter. So like, I got whatever I could get. I got something part-time, or I could work whenever I need to, because right now I'm doing finals. My minor is architecture, so I have to build this model. I have a lot of work to do, so I can't always go to work. So it's like not very many hours. So the income from the Denver Basic Income Project actually helped me be able to pay my bills, so I could dedicate time to my studies if I have to. And the job that I work is kind of a temporary thing, and it's on my phone, so I don't always have to be at work. I could just pick up work whenever I have the time to do it.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And I think it is very important to allow people to have that flexibility to pursue their studies, because your degree, it appears to me, is your stepping stone to the next level. You already have a lot of experience in construction. You said you have a passion for it, but if you get that degree in engineering, all of a sudden you're going to be able to qualify for jobs at a much higher tier. And that is going to make an immense difference in your life. Now, Ben, you had a question for Rosemarie. Please go ahead.
Just wanted to follow up about if you were getting school loans and such as well to help pay your bills.
No, I don't get no school loans. I have not had to borrow no money. As long as my cumulative GPA is above a C average, I get a Native American grant provided by MSU. So they pay for all my schooling, just not my books and my supplies. So when I get money from the Basic Income Project, or if I go to work and stuff, I have that extra money. Plus, the Denver Indian Center also helps me with supplies and books. There, I have a lot of help. I have just like this immense, it's just crazy, and I feel so blessed by it. I don't know, but I have a lot of help, and no, I don't have to get no loans. I'm going to graduate without loans.
Yes, that is excellent. As somebody who also graduated without loans, I can attest to how liberating that is, not to have that essentially indenture of following one through one's life. We have some great audience feedback as well. So Super Fin Guy writes that a basic income provides great leverage against wage slavery. Daniel Tweed writes, every community needs a basic income project. And Twin Soul Tarot writes, basic income is a safety net, actually a safety net that works. Mike Lazine wonders if a state like California or Hawaii would be able to have a program like the one in Colorado, since both of those states have a high cost of living. I think a basic income project would still be feasible in those states, but there may need to be higher amounts, especially to cover the cost of rent. That's my hypothesis, because of how exorbitant rent is, especially in California, where in some places it's like $5,000 a month. That's unaffordable even to the upper middle class in most US jurisdictions. Now, Brent, you had a question as well for Rosemarie, so please go ahead.
Sure. And also just to respond to that last comment, there are some basic income programs that exist already in California. I know specifically there's one in Oakland And I've also read about some other interesting basic income programs in California. I remember recently reading about a basic income program in California that was fairly unique in the sense that it seemed like they were providing income to specifically, I believe it was like Latin American transgender folks in Oakland or San Francisco. And I personally, I think that there's a lot of conservatives that oppose this type of initiative that is so narrow in its scope. But I think that, with the ideals of, creating more equity in our society, I think that it's, to me, it seems fairly clear that these people are probably, had less of an advantage societally than most other people in the mainstream, just for a variety of reasons. And so I thought that was an interesting program. Again, similarly to the Denver Basic Income Project, a lot of these programs are fairly small. For instance, when I wrote my article a few years ago on universal basic income, Colorado, Denver specifically, the population of people who were not homeless, but living below the poverty line was about 16%. That was over 100,000 people at the time of the 660 some odd thousand people that were involved in this study. So, I mean, this is a large problem, and a lot of these test examples of basic income aren't necessarily going to resolve it in full, but they are leading the way in creating some research and creating some evidence-based information about how the fact that these programs can work. And just moving on to a question for you, Rosemarie. We've been discussing a bit about your current employment in addition to the basic income program. And I just, as Gennady mentioned, on welfare and things related to unemployment, that's, a big difficulty. It's difficult. You can't have that in tandem with receiving these types of financial stipends from the government. And so I was wondering if there are any limitations that are set out by the Denver Basic Income Program, if they, and they specifically discussed how they're aiming to help people who are unhoused. Are there any types of these limitations preventing you from earning income independently?
No, they don't set no limitations on. They're not really involved in, like, they don't ask you, if they ask you on the survey if you're employed and how much you work. And I think it's more of a research thing than it is them trying to limit your money. They don't take away anything. They just give you a set time, a set amount, and that's it. They don't, if you get a job, they're not really concerned about it, but they would like to know, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's part of the survey. I'm not quite sure about that, but they've never like said, oh, we're going to take away your income because you got a job now. That it don't work like that.
Yes, and this is actually a sign of a true basic income. As I've said before, it's not conditional on one's employment situation. And one of the greatest tragedies of standard welfare systems is that not only do they discourage people from seeking work, at the same time, those systems spend a lot of money trying to kind of nudge people into seeking work. And that also involves a huge bureaucracy. So, as I've mentioned, the Denver Basic Income Project has 3 people on its team, whereas these welfare bureaucracies can be huge and often not have the same kinds of results. So, Rosemarie, you were receiving a basic income, and yet you were motivated to find a job, and you found it all on your own, and you still keep your basic income. Whereas for a lot of welfare recipients, not only are they not motivated to find jobs, they're less likely to find jobs, and if they do, they lose their welfare. So it's a lose-lose kind of situation for them. And I think basic income definitely points to a much better way to help people. Now, there's an interesting article about the program that you mentioned, Brent, in Oakland. It's entitled What's Next for Oakland's Guaranteed Income Program. It was written in April of 2023, and it stated that the program was set to come to an end in June. The program lasted for 2 years. I don't know if it has been renewed past that time, but the article definitely highlights some cases of individuals who believe that they were clearly benefited by this program. And this was also a philanthropic program. It was funded by an anonymous donor. If anybody else has more information about it, please do share, because I'm quite interested to see whether it was continued. But it looks like these philanthropic basic income programs are able to stay true to the spirit of a basic income. Their scale is relatively small in terms of a few hundred recipients being able to benefit, but that is still a significant difference in the lives of those people. And it could be a significant difference in a community where there are now several hundred people who previously would have struggled extensively in their lives, and now they're no longer homeless. They're able to get educations. They're able to pursue jobs while having this floor of financial security. So this is encouraging. I hope that they found a way to continue the Oakland Basic Income Program. But again, anyone who has more information, please share. Now I would like to ask our other panelists if they have some questions for Rosemarie. Let's go to Art Ramon.
Well, I was sort of thinking, what if the government did this for all native tribes? And I know that the government takes in a lot of money from the Bureau of Land Management. I know they were sort of controlling a lot of native lands, taking in that revenue from the ranchers, and then they were not properly distributing that money. So it seems to me that that would be an easy way for the government to fund this for a lot of the tribes. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think I think that would be an excellent idea. We did get extra like money, COVID payments, but that's about it. In my entire life, I never received money from my tribe. But I think it's also something that's needed for anybody who is of low income to keep things equal. Because I feel like oppression. I don't know how to explain this, but like whenever, like, I don't know. I think everybody needs this type of thing to be able to get ahead or to actually succeed at anything, even just finding a job. I mean, I was homeless for a really long time. And like I used to have to find a place to shower. I used to have to find clothes, like all kinds of stuff, a place to wash my clothes, a place to sleep. And sometimes that took all day. Like just the way things are set up, and Native Americans, I think they should receive something too. But I think just anybody who is on, homeless and they need this type of support.
Yeah, and what I was thinking is a way to sort of get the government involved and make it mainstream. That would be an easy route because of the situation with, the Bureau of Land Management and native lands. But just a thought. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed. And speaking of the discussion of how Native Americans are treated, Daniel Tweed was curious what tribe you're with, Rosemarie.
Rosebud Sioux tribe.
Rosebud Sioux tribe. Okay.
Yes.
And Daniel, do you have another question for Rosemarie?
Well, yeah, it's sort of general question about these basic income projects, which are really usually pilot programs, but they're doing valuable community science. In this case, it's social and economic science. So all the data that they collect is incredibly useful to be shared among all these other pilot programs. And I'm hoping they could be expanded into not just monetary rewards, but there's a whole range of potential non-monetary ways that people can be allowed to thrive better. I know in our platform, we have a plank on homelessness that's a little bit maybe controversial because it includes in exchange for assistance in housing and basic subsistence, you have to do something like pick up trash around the city. But really, there's other things like collecting invasive weeds. I mean, just driving around town, I see tumbleweeds. The Russian thistle is not native. It's incredibly invasive. Blows around, spreads sharp, thorny seeds that can be actually converted into biochar. And people could be paid a bounty on gathering up invasive plants. So there's other ideas like merchants could price their goods on a sliding scale according to people's income. There's all kinds of reward systems and compensation systems that don't fall into just a monetary compensation system. But I'd love to see every community be getting this kind of community science data and able to implement programs based on it. So also, I was curious, what's MSU? Is that I know that's not Michigan State University, probably. It's a Colorado learning college there.
Metropolitan State University of Denver.
Great. Okay. Yeah. So I think the main sticking point most people have with basic income is like, oh, people are just going to spend it on self-destructive things, but that's not turned out to be the case. Is that people do use it in ways that will benefit their thriving abundance, which we as a party are all about. So thanks for this great guest and salon today, and congratulations on all the good outcomes.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Daniel. And Bruce Davis says he likes the ideas that you've articulated. Also, Mike Lazine says thank you to Rosemarie for saying that the basic income should be available for everyone who needs it. And he also comments that a true basic income is unlike programs such as Social Security, insurance, Social Security disability income, because the Social Security office penalizes for working at a certain wage limit. And yes, I have heard stories of people, including people who had retired, who want to earn a little bit of extra income. They have to be careful actually not to earn too much. Otherwise, they might disqualify themselves from getting Social Security, which to me is ridiculous. If people want to contribute to the economy, if they want to contribute their skills, they should not be disincentivized from doing that, especially since in prior virtual Enlightenment salons, we discussed some of the problems that are associated with the threat of demographic collapse and the labor shortages that are coming with that. If people who are older, who have retired, want to contribute a bit more, they should be encouraged to do that. That is helping sustain our economy in many respects. So I do think a basic income is a much better design. And Art Ramon also comments, that's why the native basic income is a good idea. Who is going to argue that natives should not get government money from the Bureau of Land Management of Native Lands? Indeed, I think a strong case could be made, and perhaps some of the advocates and activists for better treatment of Native Americans could be brought on board with that, because that could even be framed as reparations. And that could then receive acceptance from a wider constituency. Now, Brent, you have another question, so please go ahead.
Just hoping to compare and contrast a little bit further this program, your experiences, Rosemarie, and Social Security and welfare and such. Specifically, I just am interested in what you've observed so far as bureaucracy in the Denver Basic Income Program. I'm interested to know how many points of contact there are for you to engage with this community. And, if you have an issue, like you said, I think that one of the biggest issues with our modern welfare design and social services is the amount of fluff that's built into this, to keep people's employed and things like that. And I think that it often costs society more than it provides. And I was just wondering how much of that exists from your perspective in the Denver Basic Income Program? How much unnecessary spending is occurring to make sure that you're able to get your bills paid?
Unnecessary spending. I don't know what do you mean by that?
I guess what I mean by that is just the amount, how much bureaucracy exists. How, does it have like this like small community feel, when you reach out and try to engage with the facilitators of the program? Is there a small group of people that you're engaging with? Do they have a face? Or is it kind of like this black hole that when you reach out, you never know who's responding, and there's, a large depth of support behind it?
Oh, no, I know what you're talking about. No, okay, because the place that helped me get my housing, the Colorado Village Collaborative, I have a case manager there. And they have a whole team of like case managers and people that just help. And so like I have their phone numbers. So whenever I feel like reaching out to them, that's who I reach out to. They're kind of like, they handle like all that stuff, because they're already my case managers anyways. So I contact Colorado Village Collaborative, and if there's any, I guess they work real tightly with the Denver Basic Income Project. I've never met people from the day. Yes, I did, because they interviewed me, and we did a photograph thing and stuff, and they did an article. So I did meet them once, but other than that, no. I just usually go to the Colorado Village Collaborative or contact my case manager from there, and they take care of it,
Yes, thank you for that explanation. So it seems like the Colorado Village Collaborative is essentially a kind of liaison organization that connects people who may be eligible for something like the Denver Basic Income Project with the Basic Income Project, but they would have access to other resources, other programs as well, by which they could help recipients who are eligible. So that's an interesting model. You could have some organizations that serve essentially as hubs. And if there are many different projects, especially projects funded by private philanthropy, but there could also be some government grants in there that people could be eligible for, then these organizations could connect people to whichever of these programs they're eligible for. That's very interesting. Now, Rosemarie, I am curious to hear more about essentially what precipitated your homelessness, because you said you were in a car wreck, and you also said that you became homeless for a long time as a result of that. So that car wreck, it was an acute incident, but it caused some quite lingering effects. And I think it would be helpful for people to hear about your story as an example of how it's possible for some people to become homeless.
I had been homeless a long time, like before. This isn't my first time I had been homeless. Like when I first came to Colorado, I had some like devastating stuff happen with my family and stuff, and I was homeless for a really long time. I had gotten in trouble. I ended up in jail. I ended up in prison, all kinds of stuff, and it's just like it became like a spinning door for me. I just was going into prison, coming out, getting in trouble, and staying homeless. It was just until I got out of prison one time, and I was in this different pilot program where they released me to like a sober living place instead of like a halfway house and I finally in 2018 was able to get my own apartment. For once, DOC actually helped me instead of just throwing me out on the street and leaving me homeless. So I was able to get a job and actually to get an apartment. And then I lost that apartment because of COVID. They shut down where I worked. I used to be a stagehand. And so I ended up homeless because of that. And then I was waiting for my certifications to do asbestos abatement. So I lost my apartment because I was in the middle of switching jobs. And because I got offered a higher paying job doing asbestos abatement and demolition. So I lost that apartment and they shut down the offices. I mean, COVID was like, I had to wait until the offices from the state, from the Environmental Protection Agency to open again so I could get my certifications from the state to go to work. I had a job waiting, but I was waiting for, my certifications to go to work. And then so I got my certifications. I was able to go to work. I was staying in a shelter at that time. And I was able to get another apartment. Now, while I was at this apartment, that's when I got in the car wreck, and it was at the end of my lease. So I like lost my apartment because I had to have my car to work. So I lost my job, I lost my car, I lost my apartment that time, and that's how I ended up at the SOS camp. So I've been homeless I've been homeless a really long time before. And this is like whenever I got that step up from the Department of Corrections to be able to get my own apartment. I lived right next to the office of the parole office. I lived right next to the parole office. So, I didn't mind and stuff, but I was just trying to get out of that revolving door of being in trouble. I was trying to do something with myself and actually going to work instead of just being an alcoholic and being a bum. So I went from being an alcoholic and being a bum to working, and now I want to be an engineer instead.
Yes, and that is an inspiring journey because you continue to persevere despite this adversity, despite the multiple episodes of homelessness. You continue to seek out jobs, and sometimes the bureaucracy kind of entangled you within its workings. So you lost your shelter, even though you had a better job lined up. And that's really unfortunate. COVID, of course, and the associated COVID restrictions, especially early on in the pandemic, devastated the livelihoods of so many people. And you are one example of that. But what is encouraging about the Denver Basic Income Project is essentially how Twin Soul Tarot described it. It gives people a foundation that they can work with. So hopefully any further instances of homelessness would be prevented. And Twin Soul Tarot also writes in other pilot programs, universal basic income has been proven to be beneficial both to the community and to the individual. There have been at least 30 or so of these projects in varying states. Very interesting. Thank you for that comment. And I also wanted to get your observations, Rosemarie, as to typical causes of homelessness. So not only have you been homeless yourself, but you've most likely spoken with other homeless people. You've encountered them and their stories. Are there any common elements to their stories that stick out for you?
Well, it could just be like various things. I've seen a lot of drug addiction, alcoholism. Like people get wrapped up in stuff. It could be depression, mental health issues. I've seen like various reasons for homelessness. The breakup of a relationship, even, and the one person has the apartment and they don't want the other person there. It's just there's so many reasons why people become homeless. People don't have family, or they don't know nobody here, so that's where they end up going. So I don't know. There's various reasons. People lose their jobs. Like I lost my job because of COVID, and then I couldn't get my head. There was just like a lot of things, or I lost my job because of my car wreck, and then it's like a lot of those things can be catastrophic and they can make you depressed, and you're just like, hell with it. I'm gonna go drink for a while. I don't care where I live right now. So some people do that stuff, and it's just, I don't know. I was like, no, I got tired of it. Some people, that's just what happens.
Yes, very interesting. So it could be a number of events that precipitates homelessness, and then there could be a downward spiral where because of that situation, then there are other bad things that can happen, and a person might respond to it emotionally in a counterproductive way. So it's not always the case that, for instance, alcohol or drug addiction causes homelessness. It could be the case that something else causes homelessness, and that drives a person toward alcohol or drug addiction. And I think that's very important to understand in terms of the interrelated causes of why people become homeless and stay homeless. And also it could give some insights as to how to break out of that. Now, Brent, you have another question, so please go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, my question at this point is regarding community that exists related to the Denver Basic Income Project. In our private chat, I just shared a link related to a study that is about 50 years old called Rat Park, and this study is related to addiction science and the realization that we've discovered in the last handful of decades that the direct correlation between social interaction and addiction. Specifically, the study shows that rats, when given the opportunity to just get high, cocaine induced or cocaine laced water or heroin laced water in a cage, when the rats are given enough social interaction opportunities, essentially this rat park model, they find that these rats are able to more effectively live or and cohabitate in an environment where they have the option to ingest these drugs without just ingesting them until they die, basically. And so with that in mind, I just wanted to know if in the Denver Basic Income Program, if there is like some sort of momentum towards creating community internally for the recipients. I know that you expressed that there are these caseworkers and case managers that you're able to engage with, but I was just wondering if there's any engagement or engagement opportunities that exist for the recipients themselves to try to help, each other just collaborate on what's going on. If this does exist, are there some positive results? Are there negative results? What have been your observations, Rosemarie?
Far as I know, there is no type of community like that. I don't even communicate with nobody from the Colorado Village Collaborative. All my neighbors, they moved away. I'm the only one that I know of that lives here from there. But I do have community support from Native Americans. There are groups at school. I've become more engaged with my own church community. I found other support systems, and they don't offer that, but I think that would be a good idea.
I think that it could also be detrimental, of course, just given the nature, like parole, for instance, when people are getting out of incarceration, it's not only discouraged, but I know a lot of folks are not able to spend much time engaging with other people in the similar circumstances just to improve recidivism rates. I also want to point out how interesting it is that this program has been able to effectively reduce your own improve your own recidivism with your legal background, and I'd like to think that that's probably a common happenstance. So
yes, indeed. So we have some feedback from our audience. Mike Lazine writes that he is so glad that Rosemarie is doing a lot better now. It's very good to hear. COVID did do a lot of damage to many, unfortunately. And John H. brings up the quote from Rutger Bregman, "Poverty isn't a lack of character, it's a lack of cash." And Daniel Tweed writes that harm reduction should be the foremost goal in substance disorder response. Super Thin Guy wonders if Jeff Bezos could help out with initiatives like these. Well, he would certainly have the money. And I don't know who the anonymous donor in Oakland is. I'm not suggesting that it's Bezos, but it's possible. And I think some very wealthy individuals may want to contribute to these initiatives anonymously for a variety of reasons. But I do think there is an interest, and it's in part a kind of enlightened self-interest, because you really cannot sustain a situation where some people have vast fortunes if there's also a vast underclass. The underclass will rebel. And to prevent that, you need to give people a modicum of stable life, some sort of foundation, so that they feel like they can build up their lives, so that they're not desperate, so they're not rioting in the streets. I think that's incredibly important to understand, that societal stability requires giving people that kind of basic security. Otherwise, they will rebel. So hopefully people who are much wealthier than we are understand that as well, and will support these basic income projects. So now I'm wondering if Ben Ballweg has any further questions.
Brent, from your scholarship, that was a very nice article, by the way, that's in the show notes here. I was curious if you had thoughts on how this program, with the payments being targeted specifically to those in need, how that might have had negative consequences compared to standard UBI programs where it's just given to everybody.
Sure. Yeah, I think that momentum comes to mind here. I think that there's a lot to consider about the fact that when people have the momentum and these types of habits built in and ingrained in their own life, that it does create this potential danger that this type of basic income program can just cause more of the same and result in them returning to these negative patterns, especially when these programs come to a close. But I think that ways to overcome that, I think that especially a program like this one specifically that is focused towards people that are experiencing things like homelessness, I think that there is a benefit because of the fact that it can be anticipated that people are going to be having these types of problems arising. Whereas I think that some of the other programs that are more universal in nature might cause a tendency to not provide the types of care and the types of safety nets or opportunities for recipients to actually change their habits and find themselves in a different place in a year from now. I think that with this program, it's been notable that, as we discussed prior, there's been 3 different forms of structuring for how recipients are receiving this stipend. There's the lump sum in the beginning, there's the consistent larger payment on a monthly basis, and the smaller payment. And I think that doing studies like this to try to determine the most effective way to provide these things to people is absolutely paramount in ensuring the success, or at least catalyzing the most success possible. With that in mind, I also was wondering, Rosemarie, you expressed that you were able to receive one of the large dividends in the beginning, as well as one of these moderate monthly dividends. And I was wondering if you had any insights onto the pros and cons between these types of variations in how the structure of payments exists. Was it more beneficial to receive these larger stipends, or was it more helpful to have this consistent payment? I know that in the studies that I've read about the Denver Basic Income Project, it seemed like there was much more success in the former category when people were receiving these larger sums at once. But yeah, I was just wondering if you saw any pros and cons to these different variations.
I think the way they gave me the money was awesome because I had a little bit of a lump sum to do something with and to get my home set up, because I had just gotten an apartment. So it gave me the money I needed, and I needed stuff for school and stuff, because I was just like studying on my dining room table. I had stuff spread out everywhere. But I was able to get the things that I needed. And plus, I still had money, the $500 every month to help me pay my bills and to be able to get my basic necessities like laundry detergent, dish soap, like things like that. I think it was spread out over a year, and I think I think it's good the way they did it. The way I received it anyways, it was really helpful.
Great. Yeah, and I think that another thing, Ben, just to step back a second as well, is the concern about how people are going to use the money or spend the money, or if they're even going to spend the money. I think that when you look at people who are on disability and things like that, I've got a friend of mine who's receiving a large amount of money for disability settlements from the state and the Fed, and he is restricted on how he can use this money, in the sense that if he doesn't spend it all by a certain point in time, they're going to actually take it back. And so I think that there's something to be said about the economic benefits that can be seen when the recipients are in these lower economic brackets, because of the fact that the money is likely going to actually boost the economy. I think that economists could argue that maybe there's a broken window fallacy going on, but I think that at the end of the day, the amount of money that we're spending in this broken window fallacy, war economy. I think that it's hard to truly make that argument that that's a broken window fallacy. And I think that there's a benefit for society at large when these programs are functioning in a way, like, as I mentioned in the beginning, a negative income tax, where they're designed to benefit those who are in most need of receiving these types of programs. Because I think that it is valid to be concerned about the amount of infrastructure and the amount of financial cost that would go into true universal basic income program, when we have, of course, such a large percentage of the population below the poverty line. But I think that there's something to be said about these folks that are above it not necessarily needing it, and that it could be straining our economy. But again, from what I've read, the universal basic income programs that are most universal in nature seem to be having the most holistic benefits that can be seen in a wider range. And especially since a lot of these programs are pilot programs, as has been discussed, there's something to be said about the data and the information that this is generating for us to build future studies and future programs. And another question that this rises into my mind with this is, Rosemarie, were there any types of incentives that you bore witness to related to getting recipients to fill out these surveys and things like that? I would imagine that the research and the data that could be generated through this would be very valuable. And so I'm just wondering if they're offering additional payments or anything like that to encourage the recipients of the program to provide this type of information.
Well, when we fill out the surveys, I think like the ones we do every 2 weeks, it's like an extra $5 for the survey. And it's a short survey. It's not really all that long. And then the one that they give us, I think it's every 3 months. There's a longer one, and I think it's like $30 for that one. But yeah, that's what they give us for doing the surveys.
That is great. I think people should be paid for filling out surveys more often, because they do provide valuable data to the organizations conducting the surveys. And of course, that is an incentive to complete the surveys. And I think especially for the basic income project, where giving this kind of financial floor to people is the entire idea, if you're asking them to fill out a survey, that's valuable work that they're doing, so they should be paid for it. So I like that design, and it offers a little more added opportunity to the recipients. Bruce Davis has an interesting observation. If we were to use the money that is spent on war and then rebuilding the places that are destroyed, instead to help people in need, then we would forego all of the war destruction and rebuilding. So anytime the United States gets involved in a war, either by sending troops there or by funding that war, valuable infrastructure gets destroyed that will need to be rebuilt. Often it is rebuilt with American tax dollars. Think about how much money the US federal government spent on rebuilding Iraq and then Afghanistan. And of course, a lot of what the US rebuilt in Afghanistan has been destroyed again. Most likely the US is going to be funneling billions and billions of dollars to rebuild Ukraine, which has become quite similar to Afghanistan in the scope of the devastation. What if instead we could have spent that money on helping people in the United States? What if instead that money could have been spent on providing a basic income for people? Certainly that is a superior option. Now, Daniel wonders in our private chat, does the basic income that is given to you take the form of a debit card? Is that how you receive it?
Yeah, that's how we receive it. They give it to us on the debit card. They provide it to us when we first, receive the money. And then the money's reloaded onto the card. It's a reloadable card. If we lose it, we just contact the organization which helped us get into contact with the Denver Basic Income Project, and they replace it.
Very good. And do you find, generally speaking, that they're very responsive in this regard if someone does happen to lose the debit card?
Yeah, it's pretty quick getting it back. They could track your spending. Like I use it to pay my bills, so I just use it as my regular card on my online bill payment thing, so it automatically just takes it off. You're also able to go to an ATM and just like take out money if you want to. So like, if you really didn't want them to track what you're spending your money on, you could just go to the ATM and take out the whole amount if you felt like it. But yeah, I just use it to pay my bills. So
Yes, and Daniel points out that with a debit card, purchases are fairly automatically trackable, but you make the good point, Rosemarie, if someone didn't want that, they could just take the cash out. So, Art Ramon, do you have a further question for Rosemarie?
Yeah. Do you have your own bank account besides this debit card? I mean, something to have on the side besides that in case, the money gets stolen out of there. There's a lot of fraud. So do you put money aside in your own account?
I have my own checking and my own savings account anyways, because I need it for school, I need it for work, I need it for my own like personal stuff. I've had one for like since 2018, since I, started getting my own apartments and stuff. I've always kept like a checking and a savings, because these days, whenever you go to work, they always do the direct deposit and stuff. So yeah, I have my own.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, very good. And we have some further comments from the audience as well. Mike Lazine agrees with Bruce Davis. There's more money spent on the U.S. war machine than helping out those who are living below poverty or poor. And to Mike Lazine, that is pretty immoral. Twin Soltero writes, automation presents basic income to the public as a necessity. And indeed, a lot of basic income advocates have pointed to automation and the rise of artificial intelligence, potentially replacing many jobs, as a stimulus for basic income, an impetus that people need to look at. Now, in the long run, of course, automation and technological advancement do tend to create more jobs than they destroy, but there is this transitional period to be concerned about. People need to be trained for the new jobs, and as in Rosemarie's case, sometimes they may need to get further education, go to college or go to a vocational school or take online courses to get certain credentials to qualify for these new jobs. And that training takes time. And the basic income can tide people over during those periods of time so that they don't see the automation as a threat. Instead, they see it just as another phenomenon that might lead them to a better place in the long run, but in the meantime, they have something to support them. So all of these are quite appropriate observations. And now, Daniel, do you have another question for Rosemarie?
Well, I noticed there was a lot of discussion about the war economy in the chat. And kind of as an aside, I know it's kind of a popular trope among conspiracy thinkers that the economic elites long ago decided that a peaceful economy would never provide the kind of stability that you can get from a weapons-driven economy. I mean, people are just building refrigerators, every 5 years that cost $1,000. That's nothing compared to a bomb that costs, $10,000 and blows up and creates all this economic activity. So I wonder if that's probably kind of outside the scope of this discussion, but I just thought I'd throw that out there. But yeah, if there's any thoughts on that, are we, did Eisenhower, was he trying to warn us about the rise of the military industrial complex for that reason? I think we could have, a space exploration economy that's not weapons based, that would be just as vital and just as productive as this warfare, defense bogeyman kind of economy. But that's something I think we should talk about more in the transhumanist space.
Yes, indeed. Well, I think that a peaceful economy is indeed sustainable. It is indeed beneficial for the vast majority of people. Sometimes special interests tend to hijack government agendas and budgets because of a well-observed phenomenon in public choice economics, that is concentrated benefits and dispersed costs of certain lobbying. So if special interests lobby for certain privileges, funding directed toward a particular war, for instance, or a particular expensive military contract. This is why a lot of military supplies in the United States are overpriced. The now stereotypical $700 toilet seats that the Pentagon has paid for. All of that, I think, is the result of very small, in terms of population, special interests with outsized lobbying influence being able to direct large amounts of funds to their favorite programs. And the cost of each program to each individual is fairly small. So a couple dollars here, a couple dollars there, and most people just don't have an incentive to find out about the spending or care very much. So there isn't like a radical detriment to somebody's standard of living from one of those military spending programs. But if you put them all together, each of us loses tens of thousands of dollars per year, not just in terms of what we directly pay, but the foregone opportunities, the kind of world that we do not inhabit as a result of these programs. And I do hope that we can transition from the military industrial complex to what Zoltan Istvan, the founder of the Transhumanist Party, has called a scientific industrial complex, where this kind of spending can be used to advance the human condition. And universal basic income would be a part of that. Indeed, Zoltan Istvan advocated for the federal land dividend as a way to pay for a universal basic income, where essentially completely unused federal land, so land that is not national park, land that is not, say, a Native American reservation, but just barren, empty land, could be leased to private corporations, and the income from the uses of that land could go to pay for a UBI for the entire American population. I think that would be quite a different society that results from this approach. Now, Rosemarie, in terms of how the Basic Income Project allows you to spend your time differently, you mentioned if one is homeless, then just getting food or getting shelter can be a challenge, and that can take up most of one's day. Do you feel that now you're able to spend most of your day on activities that help improve your life in the longer term? So if your basic needs are covered, more of your time is spent on these, let's say, more ambitious pursuits.
Yeah, I'm able to spend more time like looking for jobs or like going to school, completing projects. I got a lot of papers I write, so a lot of research, I'm able to do other things. I got a dog. I walk my dog now. But I'm able to live my life with more of a normal, like I'm able to live my life more normally. I don't have to, be on the street, running around, looking around. Well, because sometimes when you're homeless and you're trying to be sober too, that's kind of hard to do when everybody around you is homeless and they're all doing stuff like they probably shouldn't be doing. But yeah, I think I live a lot more better. I like my life.
Yes, very good, very good. And our viewer Super Fin Guy pointed out that basic income could also allow people more of an opportunity to be creative and spend one's time in pursuits that involve creativity. What do you think about that?
For hobbies, I do beadwork and I take up painting. I got like a bunch of other stuff I do. So I do like things like that. So yeah, I think that's a good idea. I mean, you never know, a hobby could lead to something better, like being an artist, or like, I think hobbies are a good thing to have.
Yes, indeed. And it is important to spend one's time in ways other than only earning an income. Money is a means to an end, and humans are not just one dimensional, they are beings of multifaceted interests, and creative expression is higher up on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So we're able to express ourselves creatively if we are liberated to some extent from the need to figure out where our food is coming from, where our shelter is coming from. Hopefully, our pursuits can be in those higher creative realms more often as our civilization advances. So, Brent, you've done a lot of research on basic income programs throughout the country, pilot projects. Some of them have worked better than others. Some of them might not have been true basic income projects after all. What can you tell us about essentially some common elements of programs that have worked well as contrasted with programs that don't work as well?
Sure. Yeah. Like I mentioned before, I think that the lens of analysis is really important here, because I think that one could say that some of the programs that are seemingly working better are the ones that are aimed and geared to helping people who are in more of a dire circumstances. I think that it is seemingly more difficult to measure the impact that universal basic programs are having on people who are already fairly stable. I think that going into what you were just discussing, Gennady, about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I think that one of the biggest ways to define and to view these programs in regards of their ability to attain success is by considering the fact that the penultimate goal of Maslow's hierarchy of needs is not simply financial or having a roof over your head. The goal, the highest level that you can attain in Maslow's hierarchy of needs is that of self-actualization. And similarly, Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, comes to mind here, because I think that it's not simply about having these basic needs met, but about setting ourselves up and helping us further design our lives in a way where we can find meaning in what we are doing, and so that we can self-actualize. Because I think that if we were just given opportunities to create widgets in a warehouse, just so that we can have enough to sustain ourselves financially, that's not going to provide that sense of meaning and the true benefits, that are holistic in nature and so far reaching in terms of our quality of life. And so from my opinion and from what I have observed, I think that some of the most important ways to kind of facilitate success in these types of programs is by providing recipients of these types of programs with the opportunity to truly develop themselves and develop their lives in a way that's going to create something long-standing, and not simply just throwing money to fill in the cracks at a temporary period. And so that's from my perspective, these programs that are really providing these opportunities for people to develop themselves and not just simply a paycheck. I think that that's the best way to truly attain this success. And of course, I think that another thing that is really important to consider is to try to design them so that they can be stable in their own sense. We talked about Zoltan's idea of utilizing BLM land and things like that, as Art has also described. I think that Andrew Yang is also someone that's relevant here. Talks about he's talked quite a bit about the universal basic income programs, as well as these ideas of his related to automation taxes and things like that. I think that it is important for these programs to be designed in a way that they can sustain themselves, or at least that the benefits can be measured against the costs in a way that, you know, fiscal conservatives can see that that these programs are beneficial. Because I think that, you know, a lot of the issues that I've seen in observations of other programs, you know, such as some of the Scandinavian programs in Iceland and such, is that when people start really analyzing the success of these things, there are different measures of success that people are holding in their minds. And so people are having these inabilities to come to an agreement because these measurements are not universal in nature. And so I think that it's, you know, for people who are more conservatively minded and economically, financially, they're going to want to see more well-defined reasons to support the benefits and the value in these types of programs. And so I think that it's important for them to be designed with this type of thing in mind, so that we're not just spinning our wheels for just humanitarian basis that might not have legs because of the fact that, you know, these financiers that are essential and vital for these types of things in the way that our economy functions in its current state, they need to be able to see, you know, the true value in it. You know, it's just like trying to get investors in a business and a corporation. They need to be able to see that there's a you know, positive outcomes that, you know, that can be easily attained, and that there are rewards to balance out the risk or just the value that is inherent in these types of things. And so I think that that's important. You know, I think that a lot of these programs are designed in a way to give people enough rope to hang themselves. As you mentioned, Rosemarie, you could simply go to the ATM and receive all the cash all at once and blow it on whatever you'd like. But you know, and I think that while that could be damaging to the success of these programs, I think it is important to identify these weak points and these places to consideration to ensure the success of these programs, and to make sure that, you know, there is you know, the right type of outcome being derived from these efforts. So I think that there's a lot to consider with all those things.
Yes, indeed. And Mike Lazine writes that what you said is very true. Monotonous jobs can drive many people crazy. Those jobs should be given to robots. Right now, we have a mixture of human labor and robots, depending on the corporation. But it is true that more monotonous jobs can and I think should be automated in the future. That will allow more room for human creativity to be the focus of many people. Our 2024 US presidential candidate Tom Ross talks about the opportunities inherent in AI to help us discover our true humanity, those tasks which we as humans are uniquely suited toward, and let the AI do what the AI can do best and form a complementary symbiotic relationship with AI. Do not fear AI. Instead, think about how AI can enable us to live lives that are better and more fulfilling. So Art Ramon writes he wants his robot clone mining gold asteroids. That might be a way to attain a basic income in the future, perhaps. John H. writes, it's sad, but wars do tend to keep the money machine humming along, and the tech development machine too. I don't dispute that military needs have sometimes fueled some interesting advances. For instance, DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency in the United States. Of course, I can conceive of ways to similarly motivate technological advancement without having this destructive component. And the recently established ARPA-H, which is essentially DARPA but for healthcare, may actually be a proof of concept for this. So I find this encouraging. Daniel Tweed writes, the arms race industry functions as a kind of white-collar welfare system. Well, it does indeed tend to privilege those who already have more. So that is a valid observation. Now, Twin Soul Tarot writes, to replace the amount of money spent on the war machine, we would need to place people in office who want to lift people from poverty. And indeed, the US Transhumanist Party advocates for these kinds of transformational changes. We have in our platform an explicit statement that we want to replace the military industrial complex with a scientific industrial complex. So with that being said, Rosemarie, I would like to hear a bit more about your aspirations for the future. You're studying to be an engineer. How long do you expect that to take you? And what do you hope to do once you get your degree? I think you need to unmute yourself.
Sorry, wrong button. Well, I think I'll still be going to school for another like 2.5 or 3 years. I got a couple years done, but I slowed down because when I started out with a lot of classes, and I knocked it down to 4 instead of doing all the work I was doing. I don't think there's no reason for me to speed through it, but I'm hoping to be a construction project manager. That's what I'm going to school for. On my minor's architecture. I want to do traveling demolition, construction project management. That way I could travel and do my job, there is such thing. They pay pretty good, and I like demolition. That's my thing. That's what I like to do. So, yeah.
Yes, excellent, excellent. And we do need more construction project managers because we need more construction in this country. As I think everyone watching this is aware in terms of my outlook, we need a tremendous increase in the construction of new housing, given how scarce housing has become, how unaffordable it has become in many areas. This is an issue where demand far exceeds supply, and the simple economics grounded answer to this problem is to dramatically increase the supply. Now, I'm wondering, are there any specific types of construction projects that interest you to a greater extent, or would you be happy to be a construction project manager for any development where you can find a position?
No, I just demolition, because that's usually what I do. Demolition, asbestos abatement. I want to do project design. So like I want to be a traveling construction project manager that does it's for demolition. So it'll be demolition projects that I want. That's what I want to be involved in.
Ah, all right. So demolishing perhaps blighted structures that are not in good condition anymore. Okay, understood. And Twin Soul Tarot in the comments states the land dividend idea sounds great, and they wonder what the objections are. I think some of the objections that have been leveled have been from the standpoint of, can this really be enough to afford a basic income for everybody? There are examples that offer proofs of concept. For instance, the Alaska Permanent Fund is essentially a land dividend of sorts. It's based on the oil revenue of the state of Alaska, which is then distributed equally among the citizens of the state of Alaska, but it is a variable source of revenue. Sometimes the checks that people get are several $1,000s. Sometimes they're several $100s per year. Obviously not enough to live on, but everybody in Alaska essentially supports the Permanent Fund program. It has almost no opponents because it is seen as being very direct, very fair, very accessible, easy to understand. And I think the federal land dividend can start out that way as well, where we don't set a fixed basic income. we just say there will be a certain amount of revenue from these leases, and we are going to distribute it evenly among the eligible recipients, which in the case of a federally funded universal basic income would be essentially all US citizens or all US citizens and permanent residents. And it could be a small amount to start, but it would be a proof of concept for people. It would get people familiar with it. And obviously, if somebody needs more of a basic income to emerge from poverty, to essentially have a success story along the lines that Rosemarie has experienced, they may need supplementary sources. They may need a philanthropic basic income project. There have been some suggestions for a blockchain-based basic income project, which is also quite interesting. But I think initially, as with any sort of idea, the practical implementation will be a patchwork of solutions, because none of us are in a position to just impose something particular through an edict and say, well, this shall be so universally. Sometimes we may wish to be in that position, but that's not the reality. And so we need to consider essentially what is a viable path. I think the federal land dividend is a great path to achieve this. Dan, you have a comment?
Yeah, I think the UBI, the basic income discussion, also leads into another fascinating discussion, and that is of the nature of property. You know, I'm kind of very friendly with the Georgist, geoist philosophy, where things that are not created by you but come out of nature basically are a commons of property. You know, you have your personal property, you have your private property, and there's common property, and they shouldn't all be monopolizable in the same way. Recently, the Space Act the Space Treaty has been updated to be more like the law of the sea, where a fisherman, for example, doesn't own the ocean and he doesn't own the fish, but he can create a boat and go out into the ocean and catch the fish, and the fish he catches then become his private property that he can make enterprise with. And in the same way, even though nations can't stick a flag on the moon and say America owns the moon, even though that was a bad look for the Apollo program, you can go and harvest extraterrestrial resources under the revised space property rights kind of act. And this makes sense because you look at things like the solar energy coming off the sun. There's only so much solar energy hitting each square meter of the solar system, and once you block it out, the guy behind you is out of luck. So we're going to need a property system that's more oriented toward usage fees, toward a commonwealth kinds of single tax, like Henry George visualized in his book Progress and Poverty. And you know, 100 years before Bucky Fuller, he was using the word spaceship Earth. So you know, that's a pretty transhumanist vision of property. And yeah, I think this whole discussion of universal basic income will be tied in with this commonwealth kind of property class.
So the discussion of property and land is interesting because it reminds me of John Locke's approach toward it, where property rights and land can essentially be homesteaded, but only to the extent that a person has actually transformed the land or mixed their labor with the land. And
yeah,
if you
proviso, only if there's good enough left
right.
in first the next person. Yeah.
Right. So how does one implement that in practice? I think it is important to have some degree of property in land, especially for individuals, because if you don't own the land on which your home stands, you are always vulnerable to have it be taken away in practice, or even to have it be taxed to such an extent that if you're on a fixed income, or if you're not earning an income and you have this tax, that could be quite punitive. Now, in terms of claims to property over land, sometimes those claims can be exaggerated, as Locke pointed out. So the King of England claimed the rights to all of England's forests and the right to hunt in those forests, and ordinary people could often be imprisoned or even executed for alleged poaching, where they're really just trying to hunt or forage in order to survive. And that, I think, is an example of an excessive claim of property over land. Likewise, if the United States were to claim a property right over the entire moon, or if a corporation were to do that without actually transforming the moon, that would be problematic. So there needs to be a very clear criterion for transformation of the land in order to be able to claim property over it. But
Yeah,
there
and
also
this could be addressed with like a user fee, that where the people using the land, they have a priority on like a market driven auction to, you know, to rent it from the commons essentially. So yeah, no one's going to be evicted in some of these mature visions of a geoist property system. Didn't mean to cut you off there, but just there are people working on that, like the fierce.org people. And yeah, this is a very maturing vision of Locke's vision of property. So there are solutions out there.
Interesting. And John has a recommendation as well of The Man Who Sold the Moon by Robert Heinlein, of course, a great science fiction writer from the golden age of science fiction. He also wrote Methuselah's Children, which is a novel that should be of interest to all life extension advocates. So, Rosemarie, we have about 18 minutes left in our salon. I wanted to ask you, is there another aspect of your experience, anything that you haven't shared yet that you want people to know about the Denver Basic Income Project, or basic income, or how it has affected your life, or in general, the situations of people who, at least with these projects, might be eligible for basic income, that I think the broader public ought to be aware of and understand. So anything else you want to share along these lines?
I'm just very grateful that I was chosen to be able to participate in the program. It really helped me to be able to pay my bills, to be able to have the support that I needed as a safety net. Even it was there for me when I needed it, to be able to, you know, go to school and just like get my life together. And I'm just so happy and grateful for them. I don't know what I would have did without them. And it really helped me. So like, I think, I don't know. I'm happy. I'm very happy with all that they helped me with. And I just can't express my gratitude enough to them. That's it.
Yes, yes. It definitely has transformed your life. Now, do you think if that kind of program, or something along similar lines that provides similar opportunities to people, could be implemented on a nationwide scale, that this could actually solve the homelessness problem, that this could actually eliminate homelessness? Or do you think there are other approaches that are also needed, something else that would be necessary, at least for a certain subset of the population, so that they are no longer homeless?
I think there are other things that might be needed, because in some cases, it depends on the person's mentality and where they're at in their life. And if they want to utilize the funds that's being given to them, if they want to use it for their own survival, I mean, that's up to them. Or if they want to pay bills with it, it's up to them. You can't force everybody to be successful. So like, I think they need to implement like some different things, because while people are homeless, some of them become like, they end up with problems. They end up with mental health problems. They end up with addictions. They end up being alcoholic. There are so many things. They become like the trauma that they encounter while being homeless takes a toll on their mind. So some people do need to be rehabilitated. I think there are other aspects that need to be implemented or looked at, because, you know, some people maybe they're heavy addicts, or they get a hold of that money. That's what they're going to do with it. But not everybody is the same. I think we need to look at that perspective, where not everybody's going to be successful. And some people do need different, like, they need different help. You know what I mean?
Yes, certainly not everybody is going to respond to even genuinely meaningful or effective help in the same way. And to a certain extent, you need people to want to help themselves as well. When they have opportunities, you want them to be in a position where they wish to seize those opportunities and take advantage of them. Brent, you would like to add to this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that also touching back on some of what you were discussing regarding Locke and Thomas Hobbes and such, I think that the idea of social contracts is very relevant here. I think that the current societal status quo is one in which it's just a given that if you're living underneath a certain economic standard, that you're to expect a mistreatment from society, and you're to expect that society is going to be demanding more from you than it is going to be providing. And I think that it is really about the reason for government, and that it's not just simply to protect private property and protect the interests of the property owners, but I think that it is to provide this social contract and to give people a reason to want to engage and be feeling like a part of our society. Because I think that there are so many people who would probably argue that society has failed them in today's world, and we have more opportunity and more abundance than ever before. And yet still, I think that there's more and more of this sense of defeat and this sense of feeling like people are slipping through the cracks and not being provided what they need. And I think that it is really important to view this from this perspective and from this angle of the fact that we as a society are obligated to provide this contract to the citizens of the world, the citizens of our globe, because this also provides people a sense of ownership in society and a sense of belonging. And so I think that you see these people like you're talking about, Rosemarie, who are homeless, destitute, addicted to drugs and stuff, but they have no incentive or reason to really change, because even if they have the means to get themselves into a house, a lot of people, it's so for what, for a year from now I can be working twice as hard, paying twice as many bills with half as much satisfaction, when these people, some of them might prefer to just be on the street without, these strings tied to them to dictate their own movements. And I think that if we were to work collectively as a society to provide people with this sense of belonging and an understanding that society is designed to help uplift these people, and I think that people will be much more urgently involving themselves in these societal processes and wanting to help maintain society. I think that the eschatological perspective that we see in today's age of people who want to genuinely watch society crumble around us, I think that there isn't a lack of reason for this. There's a reason why people have such a disdain and hold such a resentment towards the current state of our society. And I think that universal basic income programs, negative income taxes, and similar programs that provide more of a social welfare to those who are, especially those in dire need, as opposed to a society where at the drop of a hat we are cashing checks of billions of dollars to banks to prevent them from failing, for these big lofty reasons of economic safety. But what benefit does the common person see in these types of things? And I think that until the average person on the street sees the benefits in maintaining the status quo of our government and helping it, grow in power and size, I think that until people understand that government can function in a way to maintain and preserve the interests of the public, I think that we're going to have a tough time as a society, as a global society, to move past this current state of being that we are finding ourselves in, because it seems as though some of this stuff is just wishful thinking in the minds of many people. And, I think that if we really actively work through these growing pains, we can create a society that's going to be more effectively and more efficiently preserving these interests in ways that are just automatic, just like the facets of our economy that are, currently, human orchestrated. The progress of this automation is going to take away a lot of control, and I think it's important to put in the groundwork and put in the work, putting what is necessary to make it so that these machines are effortlessly designed to produce the results that we're looking for and that we need to maintain, these benefits in the lives of the billions of people that we cohabitate on this planet with and elsewhere.
Yes, thank you, Brent, for your observations. And this goes back to Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. Here, one can find it on Amazon. It is a fairly quick read, but a powerful one. And Viktor Frankl is a Holocaust survivor. He was a concentration camp inmate, and he noticed that the inmates who had something to look forward to, who focused primarily on the future rather than the past, were the ones who tended to survive because they gathered the inner strength to essentially persevere despite adversity. And this does speak to the importance of meaning and the unfortunate fact that in a predominantly postmodern culture, a lot of people have lost the sense of meaning because they no longer subscribe to a narrative of progress. And I think it is incumbent upon us as transhumanists to revive this idea of progress and to support the viability of this idea by pointing to not just scientific and technological advances, though those are, of course, at the core of what we advocate, but also programs such as universal basic income, essentially the application of human rationality to policy in order to address some of these long-standing problems and help people from the entirety of our society see potential paths upwards so that they're no longer stuck in this downward spiral of hopelessness and despair. So hopefully we can avoid the demoralization that our viewers have pointed out, like super thin guy, and give people a hopeful vision. And this is part of that. Art Ramon points out in our chat that we need tiny home pods as well. And this is actually also advocated for in the US Transhumanist Party platform, where we support providing tiny homes, including 3D printed homes, to the homeless as a way of very directly alleviating the predicament that they're in. So now I would like, in the last 7 minutes of our salon, to give an opportunity for the rest of our panelists to ask some final questions of Rosemarie. Let's start with Ben.
Something I've been chewing on since before this salon was, so I have VA health benefits for the rest of my life. I was wondering, and then at the same time as having VA health benefits the rest of my life, I do not have health insurance, and I have really not worked on finding jobs that provide health insurance so much. And then similarly, I was thinking, I had this 4-day weekend ahead. I had all this time, and I think I used it pretty well. I think what I'm getting at is there is a worry of providing UBI to everybody, and then you have that they get so comfortable that they don't do everything that they need to do for society to function. Like maybe I should have gotten a job with health insurance earlier on, but since I have VA health, I don't need it. And then for having the 4-day weekend ahead of me, I think I did do pretty well on keeping on task through the weekend, but I know I hit Wednesday evening, and it was such a relief to have these 4 days ahead to not have to be worrying about getting everything done with the time I had. So I guess I'm like wondering, does the relief offset the cost to society of such a gift of UBI? Or that might be a little more pointed question, Rosemarie, but I don't know. What are your thoughts? How do you respond to that?
I had the time to get things together and to straighten out school, so I was able to better manage my life, and it gave me the opportunity to work and to find a balance in my life and get used to the things I never ever in my life thought I would be going to college. I never thought I would get help with any of it. I have worked very hard. I've done a lot of like manual labor, and now my hands and my knees are so messed up from that labor that I needed a different job. I didn't think there was going to be no hope for me. So like I'm used to working a life of physical labor. So to me, this is a slowdown anyway. So for me, I had no problem adjusting with sitting at a desk, doing schoolwork, and then it balanced out my life having something physical to do at work too, because I've always had a job, even if it's just a temp job. I am so well versed in where to find employment in my city that I know how to hustle. I know how to do it like the right way. I know how to find money the right way and go find work. I do construction. I know so many people in this city. I could go get work and go get money if I need it. So it's just like it was an addition, and it was a blessing. That's the way I look at it, because even while I was homeless and in the camp, I still went to work and made sure to pay for my storage and for my own food and for the things that I needed within that camp. I never like just let them take care of me, and I never just like let them pay everything, or like I'm still working on like it's just like an extra little bit of help that I needed. It's not like I'm just, you know what I mean? My life is very hectic, very busy, and I dedicate a lot of time to like making sure I can, be successful in my endeavors.
Thank you.
Yes, indeed. And Mike Lazine has an interesting comment here. He writes, if the UBI did not have any limits as to what kind of work you can do and still have UBI, that might be an incentive instead of a limitation. And indeed, that is the purpose of a UBI, to provide this basic income guarantee, irrespective of what kind of employment one pursues or does not pursue. But the hope is that people would still want some further improvement in their lives, that they wouldn't just be content with the basic income, that they would want to do more. And what we have in our favor here is that human needs and wants are insatiable, essentially. So most people are going to still try to improve their situation, no matter where they're at, no matter what their baseline is. So it would take a really high standard of living for most people to say, okay, I'm content, I don't want to work anymore, if that's the reason why they choose not to work anymore. The other possibility, the one that we've discussed, is with people who see no hope, no prospect for meaning or fulfillment, like some of the homeless people who choose to stay homeless. I think their choice not to work is more born out of desperation. Mike DeVerde writes, Rosemarie, I'm very happy for you. I am so glad to see you making the most of life. You have overcome. And I would like to echo that. Mike, thank you very much for your comments. And we have 1 minute left in our salon. We typically give the last word to our guests. So, Rosemarie, what would you like to say in the last minute to our viewers?
I don't know. Have a beautiful day. God bless you. And that's about it.
Yes, thank you very much for those good wishes. And I hope this has been an informative and educational experience for our viewers as well, having Rosemarie here discuss her experiences, having Brent discuss some of what he learned during the course of his research on basic income. I would once again encourage people to take a look at Brent's article, which is entitled "The Poverty Crisis and a Case for Universal Basic Income." It was originally published in Taft's Magazine. We have republished it on the U.S. Transhumanist Party website. You can read it to find out more about essentially how UBI can address the poverty crisis that we are facing in the United States. So thank you very much for joining us. The Transhumanist Party supports the uplifting of the well-being of all humans and all sentient entities, and I hope that we can all live long and prosper.